When Sheila walked into Abeokuta, even the air became quiet. Men noticed her beauty, but nobody noticed she had no shadow. By the time people realized what her waist beads were doing, it was already too late. And if you think this is just a story, wait until you see what happened to the men who crossed her. The moment Lawrence saw her waist beads click in the market, something inside him snapped. He didn't know it yet, but his life would never be the same. Sheila stepped off the bus at Challenge Roundabout with a small bag and a smile that made the sun jealous. Her wrapper hugged her waist perfectly, and the beads around her hips clicked softly, a sound that felt alive, like rain tapping on tin. Market women froze, whispering, "Where did this one come from?" Sheila didn't answer. She never did, and that should have been the first warning. Lawrence, the richest man in Ibarra, couldn't take his eyes off her. He didn't know it yet, but his shadow had already been touched. 3 days later, Sheila bent to pick a tomato that rolled away. Her beads clicked as she moved. Lawrence's chest tightened. His hands shook as he helped her. "Please, let me replace these for you," he said, voice rougher than he intended. Sheila smiled, the honey gold in her eyes catching the light. She said softly, "I can manage." But she couldn't. The bag split. Tomatoes rolled everywhere. Lawrence didn't care. All he could hear was the clicking, the tiny voices urging him closer. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next will shock you. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. By the end of the week, Lawrence had bought her a phone. By the end of the month, a new apartment. But every gift, every gesture wasn't love, it was obsession. And the beads kept clicking. At home, Mama Kudi watched. That girl's beauty, it's not ordinary, like mango that never spoils. 3 men fell before, died with smiles on their faces and empty pockets. Her daughter laughed. "Mama, not every beautiful woman is a witch." Mama Kudi didn't laugh. She knew better. Lawrence's wife, Sugar, noticed changes. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," he lied. But he wasn't tired. He was hungry. Hungry for her, for the beads, for the impossible. Within 6 months, his shop struggled. Within a year, his wife left with the children. The clicking never stopped. Every night it echoed in his dreams, counting down to something terrible. Mama Kudi shook her head, grinding pepper for soup. "Someone needs to stop her," she whispered, "before she destroys this whole community." Lawrence was only the beginning. If you think that was bad, wait until you see what happens to Dr. Ben, the smart doctor who thought he could resist her.
Dr. Ben was smarter than Lawrence, or so he thought. He'd watched Lawrence's fall from grace with the cold analysis of a man who trusted only in what he could see, touch, and measure. Ben was a surgeon at the state hospital, a man of science who'd spent years cutting open bodies and seeing exactly what made them work. That Lawrence was just weak, he told his colleague one afternoon in the hospital cafeteria. Let a woman destroy everything he built. Pathetic. His colleague, an older doctor named Benson, shook his head slowly. "It's not about weakness, Ben. I've seen this before. That girl, there's something not right about her." "Please, not you too," Ben laughed, but it came out sharp. "We're educated men. We don't believe in all this juju nonsense." "Education doesn't make you immune to everything," Benson said quietly. "Pride comes before destruction. Yes, I know the saying." Ben stood up, his white coat swishing. "But I'm not Lawrence. I have self-control." 3 weeks later, Ben met Sheila at a medical outreach in Isale Igbein. She'd come complaining of stomach pains. Nothing serious, just enough to get his attention. As he examined her, her stethoscope against her back, he heard it, that soft, rhythmic clicking. His hands began to shake. "Your beads," he said, his mouth suddenly dry. "They are unusual." "My grandmother gave them to me," Sheila said, and even through the thin hospital gown, he could see them glowing against her skin, red like blood, gold like stolen sunlight, black like the space between stars. "They are meant to protect." "Protect from what?" She turned to look at him, and in that moment, Ben saw something flicker behind her eyes, something old and hungry and patient. From men who think they are too smart to fall. He should have run. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away, to forget he'd ever seen her. But the clicking of those beads was already in his head, already burrowing into the spaces between his thoughts. That night, Ben dreamt of Sheila for the first time. In the dream, her beads unwound from her waist and wrapped around his throat, gentle at first, then tighter, tighter, until he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't be anything except hers. He woke up gasping, his wife, Lara, shaking him awake. Ben, you are screaming." He looked at her, his wife of 8 years, mother of his 2 sons, the woman who'd supported him through medical school when they had nothing and felt nothing. Just emptiness where his love used to be and a hunger for something else. "I'm fine," he said, pushing her away. "Just a bad dream." But it wasn't just a bad dream. It was a premonition. Within a month, Ben was spending every lunch break at Sheila's apartment. Within 3 months, he was performing extra surgeries and pocketing the money to buy her gifts, gold jewelry to match her beads, expensive clothes, a car. His hands, usually so steady in the operating room, began to shake. He made his first mistake during a routine appendicitis, a small nick in the patient's intestine that could have been fatal. The hospital board gave him a warning. Lara gave him an ultimatum. His sons stopped looking at him with pride. And still, Sheila's beads kept clicking. Mama Kudi watched it all from her window, watched another strong man crumble like wet sugar, watched another family scatter like birds before a storm. She counted them now: Lawrence, Ben, and before them, others whose names people had forgotten. She muttered to herself, grinding pepper for soup. Someone needs to stop her before she destroys this whole community. But who could stop a woman whose beauty was a weapon, whose beads held power older than the city itself? The answer would come from an unexpected place.
Jason was nobody special. At least, that's what people thought when they saw him. Just another bus conductor calling out destinations at Panseke Motor Park. His voice hoarse from shouting all day, his clothes dusty from running after vehicles. 28 years old with nothing to show for it except calloused hands and dreams he'd stopped sharing with people. But Jason had something the other men didn't have. He'd already lost everything once. 5 years ago, he'd been engaged to a girl named Amaka. Beautiful girl, sweet smile, softer voice. They'd planned their wedding down to the color of the napkins. Then, 2 weeks before the ceremony, she'd vanished, ran off with a Lebanese contractor who'd promised her a life in Dubai. The betrayal had broken something in Jason, but it had also freed him. He'd learned to live with an empty chest, to function without the hope that usually kept men human. Women still attracted him. He wasn't dead, but there was a wall now, a distance he couldn't cross even when he wanted to. "You are too guarded," his friend Tunde often told him. "You need to open your heart again, guy." Jason would just smile and change the subject. His heart had opened once, and someone had reached in and stolen everything valuable. He wasn't making that mistake again. So, when Sheila got on his bus one Tuesday afternoon, clicking her way down the aisle with those beads singing their ancient song, Jason barely glanced at her. "Olumorok," she said, her voice like honey, like promises, like everything men dreamed about. 20 naira, Jason said flatly, not meeting her eyes. She paid. The coins were warm from her hand, but Jason's fingers stayed cold. He gave her change and moved on to the next passenger, shouting, "Olumorok, Ibara, Esalegbe." Sheila sat in the back, confused. For the first time in years, a man had looked at her and seen nothing special. Her beads had clicked, her power had reached out, and it had found nothing. Just empty space where desire should have burned. It intrigued her, it annoyed her, it challenged her. Over the next few weeks, Sheila made a point of taking Jason's bus whenever she could. She wore her tightest wrappers, her beads stacked 3 layers deep, clicking with every breath. She smiled at him, touched his arm when giving him money, even accidentally brushed against him in a crowded bus. Nothing. Jason remained polite but distant, his eyes sliding past her like she was just another passenger in an endless stream of passengers. "You are too different from other men," Sheila said to him one day, frustration creeping into her honey voice. Jason shrugged, counting money. "We are moving. Olomorok, hold tight." But Sheila couldn't let it go. In her century of hunting, yes, century, though she looked 25, she'd never met prey she couldn't catch. The beads had never failed her. They were consecrated in blood and old promises, given to her by something that lived in the space between midnight and dawn, something that fed on men's desperation the way fire feeds on air. The beads should have worked on Jason. His emptiness should have made him even more vulnerable, not less. So she began to watch him more carefully, following the patterns of his life. Jason lived in a single room in Itoko, near the old textile market. He woke up at 4 a.m. every day, attended early morning prayer at a small church, then worked until dark. He sent money to his mother in the village. He had no vices, didn't smoke, barely drank, avoided parties. His emptiness wasn't weakness, Sheila realized with growing unease. It was armor. "I need to break him," she whispered to her beads one night, alone in her apartment. They clicked in response, eager, hungry, at whatever it takes. Because Jason represented something dangerous, proof that her power had limits, and if one man could resist her, others might learn how. She couldn't allow that. But what Sheila didn't know was that Jason had noticed her too, Not because he was attracted, the wall around his heart was too high for that, but because something about her felt wrong, like spoiled meat wrapped in beautiful packaging, like danger dressed in silk. And Jason, who had already lost everything once, had developed an instinct for danger. Mama Kudi found Jason at the motor park on a Saturday afternoon. "You," she said, pointing at him with a finger twisted by arthritis. You're the conductor everybody's talking about, the one who doesn't fall for that girl's tricks." Jason looked up from washing his bus, water dripping from his hands. "Ma? That girl with the beads, Sheila." Mama Kudi moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, even though they were alone. "She's destroyed 2 men already, Lawrence and Dr. Ben. Both of them were strong, wealthy, had families. Now look at them, empty shells, broke, alone. And you know what's the same about all of them?" Jason waited. "They all fell for her beads. Those waist beads she wears, they are not ordinary. They are tied to something evil, something that feeds on men's desire and leaves nothing behind but bones." In the old days, Jason would have dismissed this as superstition, but he'd been in Lagos, seen things that couldn't be explained by logic alone. He'd watched his former landlord's wife disappear one night and return 3 days later with no memory and marks on her neck that looked like teeth. He'd heard stories from his mother about the old ways, about things that walked in human skin. "Why are you telling me this, Ma?" "Because you are the first man she can't catch," said Mama Kudi, "and that makes you dangerous to her. She's going to come after you harder now. Try to break whatever makes you immune. You need to be careful." "I appreciate the warning, Ma, but this isn't just about you." The old woman's voice cracked like thunder. "That girl is eating up this community one man at a time. Their families suffer, their children go hungry, their wives cry themselves to sleep. Somebody has to stop her, and I think that somebody is you." Jason wanted to refuse. He had enough problems, too many in fact. He was barely surviving, sending money home while trying to save enough to start his own transport business. Getting involved with a witch or demon or whatever Sheila was would only complicate his life. But then he thought about Lawrence, who used to give him extra tips, now begging for money at the market. Thought about Dr. Ben, who had once treated his mother for free when she visited, now too broken to hold the stethoscope. "What would I need to do?" he asked quietly. Mama Kudi smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. "First, you need to understand what she is." That night, Jason learnt about the waist bead women, creatures that had existed for centuries, feeding on men's life force through seduction. The beads were their hunting tools, enchanted to draw out a man's essence, leaving him hollow. Some said they were once human women who'd made dark bargains. Others said they were spirits who'd learned to wear flesh. The only way to stop her, Mama Kudi explained, is to break the beads, but they are protected. Trying to cut them off her will kill whoever tries. The only way is to make her take them off willingly. "And how do I do that?" "Make her fall in love with you. Real love, not the twisted hunger she usually feels. If she truly loves you, she'll want to be human again, to be real. Then the beads will lose their power." Jason laughed bitterly. "Ma, I can't even get a normal woman to love me. How am I supposed to make a demon fall in love?" "You already have something she wants. You're immune to her tricks. That fascinates her. Use that fascination. Make her feel something she's forgotten how to feel." It sounded impossible, but Jason thought about his mother, who'd worked herself half to death to raise him alone. Thought about all the women like Sugar and Lara, watching their families crumble. Thought about the children who had lost their fathers to Sheila's hunger. "I'll try," he said finally. Mama Kudi nodded. "Good, but be careful, Jason. The moment you start this game, you're putting your soul at risk. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and you'll end up worse than Lawrence or Ben." "I've already lost my soul," Jason said quietly. "Can't lose what you don't have." The old woman looked at him sadly. "Oh, child, you have more soul than you think. That's what makes you dangerous to her and what makes you vulnerable." The next day, Jason did something he never did. He smiled at Sheila when she got on his bus. It was a small smile, barely there, but Sheila noticed immediately. Her beads clicked excitedly, sensing a crack in her armor. "Good morning," she said, her voice dripping sweetness. "Morning. You take this bus a lot. You walk near Oluma Rock?" It was the first personal question he'd ever asked her, and Sheila's heart, if she still had one, skipped a beat. Yes, I work from home. I'm a seamstress." "That's nice. Good skill to have." The conversation was nothing, meaningless small talk, but to Sheila it felt like victory. The wall was cracking. Soon he'd be like all the others, hungry, desperate, hers. But then, over the following weeks, something strange happened. Jason continued to be friendly, but never crossed the line into desire. He remembered her name, asked about her day, even helped her carry heavy bags once, but his eyes never lingered on her curves, never glazed over when her beads clicked. He treated her like a person. It confused her, made her angry, made her feel something she hadn't felt in decades, curiosity about someone other than herself. "You're not like other men," she said to him one evening, the last passenger getting off the bus. "You've said that before. I mean it. Other men look at me and see only what they want. You look at me and see... She trailed off unsure. A person? Jason suggested. Someone with a life and problems and dreams? Sheila laughed, but he came out bitter. I haven't had dreams in a long time. Why not? The question was simple, but it hit her like a punch. Why not? Because I traded my dreams for power, traded my humanity for eternal beauty, traded my soul for these beads that never stopped clicking, clicking, clicking. It's complicated, she whispered. Jason looked at her then, really looked, not at her body, but into her eyes, and Sheila felt something shift inside her chest, something that felt almost like pain. Everything worth talking about is complicated, Jason said gently. Doesn't mean it's not worth talking about. And for the first time in 100 years, Sheila felt tears sting her eyes. Sheila stopped hunting. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. She just forgot to seduce the men who stared at her. Forgot to let her beads work their magic on the wealthy businessmen who approached her. Her mind was elsewhere, caught on the puzzle of Jason, the man who saw her without wanting to consume her. She began taking his bus even when she didn't need to go anywhere, just to sit in the back and watch him walk. Watched how he helped elderly women with their bags, how he laughed with the market sellers, how he gave free rides to children going to school. You are too kind for this world, she told him one day. Kindness isn't weakness, Jason replied, not looking at her. It's the only thing that makes us human. Human. The word echoed in Sheila's mind. What did it even mean to be human? She'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable, to need, to love without devouring. But something was happening to her. The beads felt heavier now, uncomfortable against her skin. They still clicked, but the sound no longer pleased her. It sounded like chains, like prison bars, like the ticking of a clock counting down to something terrible. Jason, she said one evening, when they were alone at the motor park. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold. Can you tell me something? He stopped cleaning his bus and looked at her. Of course. I'm not what you think I am. I know. The words hit her like cold water. You know? I've known for a while, Jason said quietly. Mama Kudi told me about the beads, about the men you've destroyed, about what you are. Sheila's heart, yes, she realized with shock, her heart was beating again, began to race. Then why? Why did you keep talking to me? Why were you kind to me? Because kindness isn't something you earn. It's something you give, especially to those who need it most. He stepped closer, his voice gentle. You are trapped, aren't you? By those beads, by whatever bargain you made to get them. You've been trapped so long, you forgot what freedom feels like. Tears began sliding down Sheila's face. Real tears, hot and wet and human. I was 17. My father had just died. We had nothing. No money, no food, no hope. A woman came to me in the night and offered me power, beauty that would never fade, the ability to make men give me anything I wanted. All I had to do was wear the beads and feed them. Feed them? Men's life force, their hopes, their dreams, their love, everything that makes them alive. The beads consume it, and I get to stay young forever. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was saving myself. I didn't realize I was becoming a monster. Jason's hand moved to touch her face, then stopped. You're not a monster. Monsters don't cry. Monsters don't regret. But I've destroyed so many lives. Then stop, Jason said simply. Take off the beads. I can't. If I do, I'll... She stopped, realizing she didn't actually know what would happen. The woman who'd given her the beads had said she would die if she removed them, that they were part of her now. But was that true? Or was it another lie, another chain? What if you don't die? Jason asked, as if reading her mind. What if you just become human again? The possibility hung in the air between them like a prayer. That night, Sheila stood in front of her mirror for hours staring at the beads wrapped around her waist. Red, gold and black, blood, greed and emptiness. For 100 years, they defined her. For 100 years, they'd been her power and her prison. She thought about Lawrence begging in the streets. Thought about Ben, his hands too shaky to hold a surgical knife. Thought about all the men before them, all the families destroyed, all the children who'd grown up without fathers because she was afraid to be human. And she thought about Jason, the man who saw her, really saw her, and didn't look away. Her hands moved to her beads. They burned at her touch, sensing her intention. In her mind, she heard the voice of the woman who'd given her the beads. If you remove them, you will lose everything, your beauty, your power, your life itself. Maybe, Sheila whispered to herself. Or maybe I'll finally get to live. She pulled. The beads resisted, tightening around her waist like a snake. Pain shot through her body, hot, sharp, endless. She screamed but kept pulling, kept fighting against the power that had owned her for a century. The beads began to glow, brighter and brighter, and Sheila saw images flash through her mind. Every man she'd destroyed, every family she'd broken, every child who'd cried for a father lost to her hunger. The guilt threatened to crush her, but she held on to one image, Jason's eyes seeing her as human. With a sound like breaking glass, the beads snapped. They fell to the floor, their glow dying, their clicking silenced forever. Sheila collapsed beside them, her body racked with pain. She felt herself changing, her skin loosening, her hair thinning, time finally catching up to her. But something else she felt, her heart beating strong and real, her lungs drawing breath without the beads controlling each inhale, her soul returning to her body after 100 years in exile. She was human again, mortal, vulnerable, free. And she was terrified.
Jason found her 3 days later, lying on the floor of her apartment, too weak to move. She looked different, older, thinner, more real. The supernatural beauty was gone, replaced by something better, humanity. Lines around her eyes, imperfections on her skin, mortality written in every feature. "You did it," Jason whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm dying," Sheila said, her voice hoarse. "The beads, they were keeping me alive." "No," Jason said firmly. "You're not dying. You're living for the first time in a century. There's a difference." He carried her to the hospital, the same hospital where Dr. Ben used to work. The doctor said she was severely malnourished, dehydrated, her body in shock. But there was nothing supernatural about her condition anymore. Nothing that couldn't be healed with time, care, and medicine. Jason visited her every day, brought her food, told her stories about his passengers, made her laugh with his terrible jokes. Slowly, painfully, Sheila began to recover. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him one afternoon. "After everything I've done, why do you care?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance," Jason said simply. "Even people who don't think they deserve it, especially those people." As Sheila healed, she insisted on making amends. It wasn't enough, could never be enough, but it was something. She found Lawrence living in a run-down room and gave him the deed to her apartment, found Dr. Ben and paid for him to go to a rehabilitation center to get help for the addiction that had replaced his addiction to her. She couldn't give them back the years she'd stolen, couldn't restore their families, but she could help them start rebuilding. "I'm sorry," she told each of them. The words felt inadequate, too small for the damage she'd caused, but they were real and they were true, and that had to count for something. Lawrence looked at her, really looked, seeing her as human for the first time, and slowly nodded. "I forgive you," he said, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Dr. Ben was harder. His hand still shook when he saw her. His eyes still held the haunted look of a man who'd lost everything. But eventually he said, "I can't forgive you yet. Maybe I never will. But I won't let you keep destroying my life. I'm taking it back." It was more than Sheila had hoped for. Months passed. Sheila got a job in a textile factory in Itoku, earning honest money for the first time in her life. It was hard work. Her hands blistered, her back ached, her body reminded her that she was no longer young and invulnerable. But there was something beautiful about the pain. It meant she was real. She and Jason grew closer, but not in the way her old self would have pursued him. There was no seduction, no games, no power plays. Just two broken people learning to trust again, one small conversation at a time. "I don't deserve you," Sheila told him one evening, as they sat on a bench near Olumo Rock, watching the sunset paint the city gold. "Good thing love isn't about deserving," Jason replied. "It's about choosing, every day, choosing to see the best in someone, even when they can't see it themselves." Sheila looked at him, this man who'd saved her not with weapons or magic, but with simple kindness, and felt her human heart swell with something she'd forgotten existed. Love. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful love. "The beads are gone," she said softly, "but I'm still scared. Scared that I'll hurt you. Scared that I'm still a monster inside." "We're all monsters inside," Jason said. "We're also all angels. The question isn't what you were, it's what you choose to be now." And Sheila chose to be human. Listen, this story isn't just about waist beads or supernatural beauty. It's about the beads we all wear, the masks, the lies, the versions of ourselves we present to get what we want. Maybe your beads are the fake personality you put on to attract someone. Maybe they are the image you maintain on social media that's slowly destroying your real life. Maybe they're the lies you tell yourself about who you are and what you're worth. But here's the truth that Sheila learned the hard way. Anything you gain through deception, you lose to reality. Any relationship built on manipulation will eventually collapse. Any power that comes from making others weak will ultimately make you weaker. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own life and the beads you might be wearing, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what beads you're ready to take off. And remember, you are not defined by your worst choices. You are defined by what you do after you make them. Choose redemption. Choose authenticity. Choose to be beautifully, messily, perfectly human. Until the next story, keep your heart real and your spirit free.